all to our next live stream broadcast. We're just waiting for the numbers. I'll take it really quickly, actually. We'll just wait for a few more people to join. It's always a little bit of a process at the start as they sign up. But welcome to the session. It's great to have so many people joining us again. I think one of the good things about COVID, there's not many, but one of the good things is that we've been able to connect online with a lot more people and share a lot more thoughts about industry practice. And so welcome to all of you. The session today is going to be focused on streamlining the review process. And we're really looking forward to getting into a good discussion on that. I think quite often we focus on onboarding clients and discussions around using technology in that way, and we forget that so much of our business is reliant on getting that review process done efficiently and good service to the existing client bank as well. I'm really pleased to be joined by two guests to help us on our discussion today. First of all, Adam Cook from Lyndhurst, and secondly, Max Maxwell from Iress, who'll be sharing their thoughts on the review process and the use of technology to streamline it as well. So welcome, gentlemen, and thank you for your time.
Yeah. Hi,
Mark.
Now, I should say that when we've been running these, it's been really good to have some questions coming through, and there is Q&A that you can use. So please do ask questions as we go through. We'll try and get through as many of those as possible. Also worth saying, today is about discussing some of the key principles of it. If people want to see some of the technology that Iress uses in the review process, Max has a follow-up session on the 15th at I think it's 11 o'clock, Max, that we'll be sending out details to join, which you're very welcome to join. But today we really want to get into the heart of what how we make that review process work and discuss some ideas around that. So to kick us off, first of all, can I ask Adam, could you give us a brief introduction to your role and a little bit about Lyndhurst?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, thanks. It's Adam Cook from Lyndhurst Financial Management. We're a Hertfordshire-based firm. I'm the operations director. We've got 3 offices in Hertfordshire, two in Harpenden, one in Hitchin. We've got 30 staff, sort of 13 advisors, 6 paraplanners, some administration staff. So a reasonable size now. We're servicing about just shy of a sort of 1,000 clients a year, really, on an ongoing service basis, which represents ticking up probably about sort of 2/3 to 3/4 really of sort of revenue. I think the service, ongoing service is a key part of what we do now, and the remainder being new business. So yeah, I've been working with Xplan for 3 years. Before that, it was Advisor Office, so we've had a fairly strong relationship with Iress. My role, I've done sort of 22 years with Lyndhurst, so sort of started out at the bottom, should we say, and power planning, helping our MD, and we've built the business together, really. During that time, I've been sort of key to the sort of technology developments that we've done within the business, and sort of keen to push on some of those business efficiencies utilising technology.
Great stuff, and we'll delve into more of that as we go through it. Yeah, good to have your thoughts on how you're using that technology. I know you're doing quite a lot of stuff in there that's quite exciting. Max, do you want to just give a brief introduction to yourself? And I'd also be interested in terms of the percentage of work you're seeing other clients doing on the review process are close to new business. Any comments on, is what Adam described as sort of 2/3 on the review side typical for what you're seeing? So first introduce yourself, and then maybe a little bit about what you're seeing in the industry as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, and great to be on the panel with Adam as well. Yeah, I work in the business development team for Iress. Been with Iress for about 4 years. Prior to that, I was a very long time with a couple of large providers, but doing something very similar, working to help drive best practice and best process and efficiency with IFA firms. So that's really the passion I've been carrying through, and it's really interesting to see Adam reflecting what a lot of our businesses are saying, that 60, 70, even 90% of their client activity is in existing clients and reviews. Some of that driven by regulations, some of that driven by revenue. but a good chunk of it is just good practice. And we've seen that ramp up significantly through the last 4 or 5 months of COVID, with advisors spending a really valuable part of their relationship just reassuring and working with their clients, keeping that family and that business together. So yeah, well over 2/3 of IFA activity is managing that existing set of relationships.
And Adam, I'm interested from your point of view, do you find there is a variance in the level of activity per client type of what they need at the review process? Is it, do you vary your service levels? Are they all holistic reviews, or have you got some quick touch points? How do you manage that?
Yeah, no, we do have 3 sort of core service levels, really. We do have a sort of lighter touch service, and then a sort of core service, which we call our Lyndhurst Wealth service. And then actually we move into sort of decumulation strategy, which is our Lyndhurst Dynamic service. So as you sort of move through those strategies, so I guess the advice is sort of starting out on your journey. Some of that's transactional businesses, in terms of mortgages and insurance products, and then perhaps just starting a regular premium into an investment or something. And then as you move through, you sort of accumulate some wealth and move into a Lyndhurst Wealth service, and hopefully we retain you into the decumulation strategy as well. So we add a few more sort of bells and whistles to those services and deal with them in a sort of different way as well. It might be that the advice service is done more remotely historically. Obviously in the COVID times, we're doing a lot of it remotely, which has been good. We've been able to do that with the technology. But our Lyndhurst Wealth is sort of a more premium service, and we're going the extra mile to meet with those clients, as best we can, increasingly on video, but meeting with those clients on a regular basis and having a really good proposition sort of built around that, and trying to streamline some of that using the technology.
Good stuff. And Max, from your point of view, are you seeing that variance in service level according to client needs across the board?
Absolutely. It's been really interesting, the focus that's been applied. We did some research with clients and prospective clients last year, and they were saying that around 60% of their reviews are really no change reviews. So they're touching base what I've termed with a number of people financial cuddles. So they're a really valuable part of the relationship. They validate your there's often a paid review service, or there's remuneration attached. I think some of the change that we're seeing, and Adam's business is really good at that. They've defined their service levels very clearly and have segmented their customer base. We're still working with a lot of firms who've inherited the work they did post RDR to start thinking about service levels and how they justify their revenue and relationship. But they've maybe not taken an active step to refine those and change those over time. But yeah, typically two-thirds of those reviews are relatively light touch, but they still take a similar amount of time in preparation, review, and to conduct them. So driving efficiency through that process is key.
And maybe that's where technology can help, and we'll come on to that. So I want to delve into the technology now, and just a reminder to the audience that you can add questions in through the system if you have any. What I'd like to understand, Adam, is firstly, let's talk about the engagement with the client, how you actually communicate with the clients. You've talked about the use of video. Is that now with COVID pervasive, that all meetings are now done that way? And do you use any other technology to communicate with the clients as well?
Yeah, we sort of try and work with the client's capability, really. I mean, interestingly, I think everybody's capability, well, many of our clients' capability has been enhanced during this lockdown period and during the pandemic, due to them having sort of family quiz nights, etc., and all getting into Zoom technology and other sort of video conferencing. So that sort of helped us. So if we sort of as we approach a review, we have a number of options. We'll sort of call the client and see what their preference is in terms of having the meeting. If they're comfortable using video technology, then we'll sort of drive the review down that route. Some people just still want to just have a telephone review. We have a number of clients that are holding out for a face-to-face review, whether we'll be able to have that again this year, and as long as we know the outcomes of that. And actually, if we have to hold out too long on that, then we'll have to deal in more traditional methods such as the post, to deal with some of those clients that are exceptions. But so we have a really a choice for the clients to go down, and the way that we've driven that is in our review case. The sort of outcome of each point will be, okay, how are you going to communicate that outcome? And increasingly we're using the client portal for that as well, for secure messaging. We have one or two issues with some of the Microsoft encryption software, and clients weren't that comfortable using it, or were pressing the wrong button, even though we thought it was fairly clear. And so actually the portal has helped resolve some of that in terms of being able to communicate securely with clients.
Okay, and that communication is what replacing email. Having had some chats with you in the past, and think you also do some sort of pre-call fact finding via the portal as well. Is that true?
Yeah. So as part of our review process, really, there is a questionnaire on the portal which you guys have developed, and so increasingly we're using that, and that's just really almost like a pre-review questionnaire. So has there been any changes in your circumstances? And it goes through, I think, a 15 question set, which we've sort of automated to run if the client is a portal client. So we've sort of within our task, we've conditioned our task so that it says, has the client got a login enabled, yes or no? If yes, then actually the next task will be, do you want to invite them to a questionnaire? And if we hit complete that task, it'll automatically update the field in Xplan to send the questionnaire out. So just by hitting complete, we've done one or two sort of automated tasks with that within our process, and then the client will get an email automatically to say, please log into portal, and we've got a questionnaire for you to complete. Should only take sort of 5 to 15 minutes depending on the outcomes. And that questionnaire, they go through that then, and they give us an indication of any areas that we might focus on in the review, like change of situation, change of income, significant inheritance, and anything like that which you might focus on in the review. So that then files as a document note, and any questions that they've answered yes to are in bold at the top, and it's really easy for paraplanners and admin and consultants to then focus on those areas.
Cool, thank you very much. Now there are a couple of questions coming in online, so just going to ask those of you, if that's okay. First one for Adam, do you place a limit on the number of clients per advisor to make the service process efficient? Is there a point, I guess, where the process breaks because you've given them too many clients to look at?
There are natural limits, yeah. It is interesting when you look across the sort of developed and experienced advisors that we've got, they seem to just hit these natural limits. I haven't specifically picked a number for them, but I think we're aware of it, and we can see the trend analysis in the MI that we've got. So it tends to sort of be very similar number of clients that they're managing and assets under management that they're managing. And we do continually talk about capacity and how we might sort of increase that, but it is a case of managing your client bank. So we have younger IFAs coming through, and we might pass clients down, etc., to help manage those client banks. So I haven't put a strict limit on it, but it does naturally work like that with our sort of ongoing management of it.
Yeah, cool. There was another question that popped in there, Max. I know you've answered it online, but it's about that preview questionnaire, which is just saying, is it multi-choice or more detailed? Adam, can you answer that one? Is it?
It's basically a notes field. So has there been any change, and if yes, put some detail in here. So so as I say, sometimes it's an indicator that there's been a change. It depends on how much information the client puts in that box as to whether you might send something supplementary out. So has there been a change to your expenditure? We might forward that sort of page of our fact find out and say, actually, yeah, can you clarify which elements of it, or a bit more detail around it, unless they've completed the notes fully, sort of thing.
Okay, and Max, on that on the topic of fact finds, is that typical of what you're seeing in the marketplace, or are you seeing that capability being used in other ways? Are there new things coming down the line? Anything you would add?
We're seeing some really exciting developments around how people use that fact find data, just trying to engage their customer and taking some responsibility over updating key parts of the information. one of the interesting things, and there's a question on the list, Mark, around auto suitability and assessment. I think that's a very much a developing area, is around how do we focus our time. So Adam's business is using the questionnaire to help sharpen the focus for the review around what's changed in the customer's world. Other firms that we're speaking to are using these tools to identify which clients they absolutely have to have a review with, because there's been significant change, and which clients they could potentially leave to a book review this year, or give the client an option. But we are seeing the use of some really effective online tools. We've developed Prime in the UK as a way of bringing the fact find to life, helping focus a video-based meeting, but also using that assessment of, how are we doing? What's changed? Are we on target for our goals? Is your investment still aligned with what we'd expect you to have, and bringing that into sharp focus for those review meetings, but doing it as digitally and quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned suitability, so I want to move on from the client portal sort of discussion to some of the functions that are happening, I guess, more back office. Let's start with the suitability process, because there was something there. How's that suitability, and I guess any other reports like valuation reports, how are you doing that, Adam? How's that being automated or helped with technology, if it is at all?
Yeah. Well, within our review case that we've built, which has sort of threads and tasks within that, then as we go through, some of the tasks are produce the valuation report, and we're using Valuation Wizard to do that. We're using the data feed functions to feed the majority of that data in there, so that we know the valuations are good. We're using Letter Wizard to produce a number of sort of reporting outputs that will then either post or send it out on the portal as a sort of PDF copy. And when it comes to the sort of suitability, we're engaging with the Suitability Wizard tool as well. And I've got a number of templates that I use. I have bespoke that a little bit myself, so that I've put a couple of fields in there. So whether it's a new business suitability in the wizard, or as we're talking about now, reviews, if the users tick a box that says it's a periodic review, then that will generate a different style of template at the end, and it will pull in as much data as we can using the fields in Xplan. So we'll know that if we're rebalancing or realigning their portfolio to what are our new models, then based on the client's risk profile, it will pre-populate a lot of that model information into the suitability. So I'm getting a pretty good, robust template really built for power planners to then top and tail and put a little bit more personal detail in. When it comes to goals and objectives, again, I've built a sort of bespoke page in Xplan, and I call that our suitability of advice page, and that really picks out the client's wording of their goals and objectives, and obviously we reflect on those in the periodic suitability. So we're getting the client's own words into those templates quite easily, and everybody can lean on that page then, consultants and power planners and admin, to really understand the client at a glance, really. Is the idea of that page.
Yeah, so and probably just for I know there's a mixture of audience here. A number of you are not Xplan users, so just to talk about some of the terminology. When we're talking about workflows in Xplan, we will often talk about threads as being a workflow and tasks as being the individual components within that, and we'll also monitor cases, which would be an individual advice case, and monitor that against progress within that. So those are some of the terminology that we would often use, and that is all outcome based. So if people are using other systems, including our own, like Advisor Office, often their workflows there are linear. In Xplan, they're outcome based, so you define that it's X outcome happens, you go on and do this task, but if a different outcome happens, you go on and do this task, and that's kind of what we were talking about in some of that.
Yeah, within the cases, the benchmarks is important as well, actually.
Yeah.
And the benchmark refers to really document notes if you're a user of the software, so where you would actually file the periodic suitability, or where you'd file the fact find or the risk profile assessment, etc. So by adding benchmarks to the case, I can be confident that all of the compliance documentation which is due as part of a review is all filed under the same name, easily searchable, and has been done before I can complete a case. So if a case isn't complete, it may be that some of that documentation hasn't been filed, but once a case is complete, I can be sure that it has all been filed.
Okay. Good, thank you very much. Now, a couple of questions that have come in about some of the comments earlier. One is, I think it might have been yourself, Max, mentioned that someone might decline an annual review, but they may, of course, be paying an ongoing fee or retainer. Do you think that they should continue being charged for that retainer if they're not having the full review? And how would you position that? I'm interested in both of your views, really, but Max, I think that came from a comment you made. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so typically businesses that we work with will give clients, it's a sort of a 3 strikes and you're out approach to maintain it. You need to validate that you're doing the work to maintain the relationship and justify your fee. So, lots of those clients are being supported with a book review, certainly for the first couple of years, but I know a number of national firms who are actively removing clients from retainers if they haven't had a formal review, at least on a triannual basis. So I think it's just good practice to make sure that you're not putting yourself in a position of earning money by default without providing a fee, even though realistically you are doing quite a lot. And having your technology support that communication makes it clear. So, Adam's initiative of using the questionnaire to help re-engage with the client and focus on those clients who are undertaking lots of change is a great way of making sure that you're not missing anybody.
Okay, thank you very much. Adam, would you agree with that?
I would, yeah. Well, I mean, what we do a similar thing, 3 strikes, and actually it's clear that you're not benefiting from our ongoing advice, and therefore, we would probably turn off any ongoing fees. But during the period, if they don't engage, if they didn't fill a questionnaire in, if we send them a fact find to complete and it doesn't come back, ultimately we will conduct a review. We will just do it on the information that we have to hand and the most recent information. And if we wanted to recommend a realignment because actually one of the funds in our model had changed, etc., we will still review their fund holdings and we will recommend a realignment, and we will write to them and make that recommendation. So I'm sort of comfortable that we've still continued monitoring their funds and making recommendations. Whether they want to accept that recommendation really is still the client's prerogative.
And a follow-on to that, Adam, has come through, which is, if they decline a review or if there is a different level of review given, how do you record that? Do you record that in Xplan or what do you do?
Yeah, we have got that recorded, and that sort of comes out as part of the case. It's one of the outcomes. Why wasn't the review completed? It's either declined or postponed, or it has been completed. And we want to know whether that was, if it was postponed, whether that was the advisor that postponed it or whether it was the client that postponed it. In most instances, what we're doing is just making sure we've got a good audit control, really, to say that we have, to the best endeavours, tried to carry out this review for the client. And if the client hasn't engaged, then we try another method, which is why we've got post, or we've got email. We'll give them a call, but you can take a horse to water sometimes, but you can't make it drink. So and as long as it's well documented, then I'm quite comfortable with that. But if that continued to be the way for that client, like we say, for 2 or 3 year period, then I'd seriously question whether they value our advice and whether it's worth them paying for it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Max, one for you that sort of followed on from some of the conversation there. Is there any way of making a folder of documents included within the annual review? And I guess that might be linked to that whole concept of case manager. I don't know if you could elaborate on that.
Absolutely, yeah. Case manager is a really effective tool tied in with your workflow to automatically both set the benchmarks, as Adam's talked about, that you'd expect your team and the client to fulfill, whether that's documents or processes, but also to automatically produce things like valuations, start the suitability and the ongoing suitability review, and collect those together. So your technology should be pulling that information for you and preparing it for you, rather than you having to, those of us old enough to remember having to spend several hours trawling around various providers' websites to pull together a folder of documentation for the client. Your technology should be bringing that together for you. And that concept of folder is actually actively used in Xplan within Case to do exactly that. And it makes it really useful in future reviews, and if we're reviewing for compliance purposes, to have a place where I can check the quality of advice and the quality of submission simply and easily.
Okay, there has been a question from someone wanting to know how they can find out more about Xplan. So we're saying, Max, you're doing an open webinar demo on Xplan on the 15th at 11 o'clock. If anyone also wants a one-to-one webinar, then we can obviously just either put a message up here and we'll get in contact, or we will be sending feedback forms out to you after it. So just ask on the feedback form and we'll make sure that someone gets back to you, but we will be sending invites out to a demonstration of Xplan as well. Interesting one here sort of about the review process. And one thing for you, Adam, is would you undertake an ATR questionnaire at every review, or could you use something like the questionnaire? I guess that the question doesn't specify that, but could you just ask if any changes in situational investment attitude have occurred, which you could do in that questionnaire?
Yeah, we tend to ask for it. We use an online one. Most people are quite happy to fill that in. There are clients that will say, no, that hasn't changed. Haven't had any change in circumstances, and we will tolerate that for a year. But my policy is that we'll definitely get them to do a questionnaire the following year. So I'll tolerate a client saying, look, I haven't filled that in and there's absolutely no change. Then I'll let them do that once, and then we'll just make sure that we get a questionnaire done the next time. Questions do vary on these questionnaires from time to time. So I think there's new ways of getting the more accurate information really about their risk out of them. So that's why we adopted that.
Cool, thank you very much. Now, one question, which apologies came in early on, and I'd overlooked it, which is how are you recording and reporting costs and charges, and how are you obtaining that data from providers?
Yeah, we use a limited number of providers because we've got a product panel, etc. So that data and our fees are typically taken from the plans. So actually the providers that we use have all of that fee information and cost and charges information, so that we typically obtain that from the providers and then reiterate that either as a sort of appendix or draw attention to it in the periodic suitability. If there was any other fees that we've taken on a sort of ad hoc basis, then obviously they'd be documented in that periodic suitability and integrated into that.
Okay, great.
Worth noting, Mark, there is a MiFID module that sits within Xplan, which is just a centralized way of working that. You've just got to, as Adam said, you just got to think about which providers you're using. We're able to obtain a lot of the data from Morningstar in terms of what the underlying holdings and charges are, and mapping that against what you're charging as a provider, as a distributor yourself. So there's a couple of different ways of doing it. I think Adam's is the more common, and actually using that data as a source of truth. And quite often the providers are going to send that data out anyway to the client. So it does mean you've got a consistent bit of reporting.
Okay, no, we're almost out of time. I believe it's zoomed by, so it's a sign of good conversations, Max and Adam. So thank you for that. There was one last question in there, though, that well, actually a couple of last ones coming in actually. And if you have got any more, just ping them in. We might be able to squeeze them in. But the one I did want to touch on first is MI. And Adam, what do you use much MI? Do you get that from Xplan? And
I do.
And what do you use it for?
Yeah, I do. I mean, in terms of the reviews, I mean, I do monitor whether they've been completed on time or whether they sort of trickle over into overdue, and that's basically my case status. So if it's gone over the expected due date, then it turns to overdue, and I can keep an eye on that on a regular basis throughout the year and look at the reasons why that's overdue. And again, getting into some of the further analysis in exporting that data using the export function in Xplan. So I'm exporting the sort of threads and the tasks, and I can see exactly where we are for a particular review, or as I mentioned earlier, benchmarks, so I can see what benchmarks have been completed for a case and what hasn't. So I schedule a number of exports that I've built, and then and they come out on a monthly basis to me and to the team, to individuals as well, to make sure that they know what reviews they've got for the year, or what they've got coming up for the month, or what they've got overdue from last month, and are addressing those issues as we go. So yeah, MI is extremely important to us. I increasingly have, or more recently, have used Power BI, which is a Microsoft product, which just helps with some of that analysis. So I can drop the CSV exports from Xplan straight into Power BI, and I've got a number of sort of tabs set up that give me that core data that I want. You know, things like how many clients have I got on portal and things like that. So I can see the trend analysis of you know, as we were talking about earlier, how many people are now using portal compared to where we were a year ago. And obviously that's quite significant with the you know, the way that we're operating the business at the moment. So yeah, there's some good management information I can get out of there, and then drill into more detail for what I call KPIs, really, you know, key performance of individuals and how they're performing in doing their reviews, etc.
You're a patient man waiting monthly for it. We use Xplan for our own processes. I tend to do 1 or 2 a day. So
well,
I'm always
it depends on the detail. There's a consistent monthly one, and then actually that gives me the really good overview, and then actually I might drill into, as I say, some of the KPI data, and actually do I really understand what that number means, and then run some other reports. But
of course. One couple of last minute ones. Conscious we're a little bit over. What fund research do you do to justify ongoing suitability, and do you use a research tool to provide comparisons?
We have an in-house investment committee, and they're continually doing that based on the asset allocations, etc. They do qualitative and quantitative research on our funds. So that's an ongoing thing. So if we then make changes to models, then at the review we will talk to clients about those changes, and realign models.
Cool, great stuff. Well, look, it's been a rapid talk through, but I really appreciate both your times there, because that's been really some good insights there. Just to repeat, there is going to be a follow-up session if people want to see Xplan and how we do some of this stuff around the review process. Can I thank you all for dialing in? It's great to have so many of you taking the time out. We will make the recording available if people want to share it with colleagues as well, and there will be a follow-up form coming out to you, which I encourage you to fill in, so we know how to improve things for the next sessions, and make sure that we're always having conversations that are relevant to you. Ideas for further sessions as well, please send those through. We did cash flow planning last month, reviews this month. Ideas for next month always welcome, so please do send those through. But other than that, thank you all for your time, and take care and stay safe. Thank you.